Let's get the cruel away. So, hello everybody. Welcome to Whining On. My name's Matthew Bowden, the Encouragable Rogue. Today we're back here on the Living History podcast, and we have Chris Cross. Let's get Chris in the feed. So, hey buddy, how you doing? Good to see you.
There you are. How you doing?
I'm not bad, buddy. How about yourself?
I'm all right. Thanks very much.
I'm loving seeing the gold there. You got some pimping wealth sitting upon yourself.
a bit of costume jewelry.
There you go. Well, just showing success on your chest. Said showing your success on your chest.
I like it.
I have to say this, mate, you know, from knowing you for years around the festivals and stuff, you're one of the most hardest working people I know. Really are.
I haven't stopped today. I know that's a mad thing to say during a pandemic, but I haven't stopped. I've just, it's part of being a little bit proactive about not having very many gigs at the minute. I've brought out, because at the time of interview, this is December, almost December, end of November, I brought this out, which is called the Geordie Santa.
Aye.
And it's a Christmas story about a bloke called Jack the Geordie who meets Santa in his reindeer on Christmas Eve and goes on a magical adventure with him. So I've been flogging this, and I've written it myself. I've got an illustration.
Why did you write it? What made you want to do that?
Well, I need to make some money. I've got to pay the bill.
Yeah, but you know, you could flog stuff. You could go out and do all sorts of different things. You could become a magic tutor. And what made you think, right, I'm going to write a children's book for Christmas?
I am doing those things as well. I'm doing it all. This is the hallway.
Wow.
I've got big bills. I'm doing everything.
I bet, mate.
Possibly can.
But Chris, the last time I saw you, you were moved into a house next door to your grandparents.
That's right. I bought a 3-bed semi in 2010.
That's not a 3-bed semi. Look at the hallway.
No, this isn't. I had a 3-bed semi in 2010, and then my grandparents lived next door in the other 3-bed semi. But due to family issues and all that kind of stuff, I bought that property that me and Granda lived in off my mum, who owned it at the time. So I ended up having 2 3-bed semis, which I sold in December, and I bought this one. Okay, fair enough. And you got mortgage payments to make off, so you got to keep going through the things, yeah. It's more gas, electricity. It's wow. It's mega money to pay for everything. But I'm so to answer your question, why a children's storybook? Well, why am I not doing anything else is the other question. The other things I'm doing are virtual shows on Zoom. I'm teaching magic on Zoom. I'm performing tricks on Zoom and WebEx and all the other ones that the people want you to go on. I'm doing a drive-in magic show and a drive-in magic lesson. It's the first drive-in magic lesson in the world and the first drive-in magic show in the UK. So I'm doing shows and I'm doing digital shows, and in terms of selling things, I bought a company called the Card Collection, which was set up in 1969, and it's a magic dealership. It's a magic business that sells all kinds of cards and magic tricks and all that jazz, and it was owned by a guy called Clive Lee Warden, who retired and sold the business a few years ago to a guy who hasn't really done much with it. So I bought the business during lockdown off this guy. So now I'm selling lots of magic tricks, exclusive magic tricks. Gazzo, I'm selling his DVD exclusively to magicians.
Wow, exclusively.
So I'm selling all sorts of stuff. So I've bought a business during lockdown that sells magic tricks. I've started doing Zoom virtual shows and magic lessons, drive-in magic shows and magic lessons, which have been popular, and I've wrote the book. So I have tried everything else.
If I knew, well, I do know you, since I know you from a long time, doing all the magic things is things I could have gone, well, that's a logical thing I could see Chris doing during lockdown. I'm going to try and capitalize off the skills I have, but still a children's book wouldn't be the thing that it crossed me for you to do, you know?
I couldn't get to sleep one night. That's what it was. I couldn't get to sleep, and I had this idea in my head about the story, and I had a brilliant idea about festivals yesterday. I woke up, remembered the dream vividly, and I think I could make a few quid when the festivals start up again because of this dream I had. No, I'm not off my tits, I promise. It was an actual dream that I had, and I think that'll work. But we'll see. I might work on that. So this idea for the children's storybook, well, I thought of a good story in my head when I couldn't get to sleep. So about 2:30 in the morning, I got out of bed, wrote it all down, and then the next day I made it all rhyme. And then I got in touch with an illustrator and said, I want these pictures drawn exactly like this, that through that window, this looking like this, blah, blah, blah. And the illustrator put what I wanted onto paper, and then I got 1,500 printed.
And have you sold 1,500 yet? Have you gone through your first print?
No, not yet. No, I think I'll have that stock for next year and maybe the year after. But it was cheaper to get 1,500, and the price per unit came down and all that. But I've sold about 60 today.
Today, wow!
Which is mint. So I've been writing all the envelopes, signing all the books, putting the dedications and messages in and stuff. So I've just been like sitting doing that all day today. So it's nice to get out, even though I'm in. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's good to feel like you're doing something productive. So you're obviously right now a busy man, and when I knew you, when I knew you better, when we were performing in festivals together, you were a busy man then. You were a guy who was constantly trying to get a sniff of some promotion or a bit of work here, some way to promote yourself here, progress your work here, get exposure here. You were
always
constantly looking.
Always staying on.
So why start in a life like this? Why become an entertainer? It's not the surefire way to make loads of money as a kid. It's not necessarily something that is going to be this big business, so why as a young person decide to do it?
And wrong again.
Well, clearly.
You said it's not a surefire way to make money. Secondly, you said it's not a big business. Wrong about two things. I'll tell you my experience with that. When I was 10, I learned my first magic trick. I was, the usual, the fat bullied kid at school. You learn a trick, you show people in the yard, people say, oh, that's amazing, how'd you do that? And I say, oh, I'm not going to tell you. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're like a magic man. And then I became the magic man throughout school. And then I learned how to do more and more tricks, kept doing them in the schoolyard and things like that. And then when I was 13, I had an idea to go around. I live in Newcastle, and its nightlife's quite notable. And I went around to the bars and nightclubs and spoke to the management and said, can I come in here and do some magic for you? And I turned up with a suit on and walked the walk and talked the talk. And there was no question of, are you 18? Can I see your ID? I was just like really tall, on the ball. And I said, hi, mate, my name's Chris. I'm a magician. I'd love to come into your bar and do some magic tricks. All they asked was, how much is it going to cost? And when I said nothing, they said, fine, crack on. So that's what I did when I was 13. I went into bars and nightclubs, strip clubs, casinos, all around Newcastle, and I worked for tips. And
how did you know this was possible? How as a young man did you know that this could be done?
I don't think. I think that's a good question. It must have started somehow. I know how it started. I used to go for holidays with the family in Torquay, right? And there was a magic shop down there. Well, it was more of a joke shop, but they sold a couple of bits of tricks. Anyway, I ended up there talking to the owner, who died a couple of years ago. Bless him. It was the joke shop right on the harbour side, and he was a sort of like large bloke with a big tash, Hawaiian shirts on, smoking cigarette after cigarette, bronze tan. He was like this like gangster.
All right, lad.
Yeah, proper one. And we went down earlier this year, and I popped in to see him, and it was his daughter who's got the shop, and he died, but not to worry. So I was talking to him in the magic shop on this family holiday when I was like 12 or 13. and he owned the bar next door to the magic shop. And I said, do you mind if I do? I think I was showing him tricks, we're talking to him. I ended up doing magic for tips in his bar. I don't know how exactly, but I guess
was there a possibility that he encouraged you? He said, well, why don't you try and make a bit of cash? Give it a go, ask him for some money at the end. Was there a bit of guidance, maybe?
I don't think so. I don't I don't think he was a sort of bloke who would give you too much encouragement to go and do something. I don't know. I guess.
Had you seen any street performers before? Had you been, say, to London and seen Covent Garden, or was a street performer past Newcastle at that point?
No, I hadn't done any of that. No, I mean, I might have seen street shows when I was a kid. I remember when I was really young, there was a guy on Northumberland Street in Newcastle outside of McDonald's threw a Diablo higher than the highest building on the street. I remember that. I don't know who it was.
And he made a bit of cash doing it, I take it.
Yeah, he must have done. I was just a kid, but my start was in Torquay, then working this bar. So when I got home, I went round and approached all the bars, got residency at lots of them, so that I could go and work for tips. Now, when I was 13 years old, I was taking a couple of £100 a weekend, so I'd go out and do a Friday and a Saturday night. If that was just £100 a night, that's £200 when you're 13, and you live with your grandparents. You pay no bills. There's no mortgage. You don't pay for food. You're at school. So I always had the best trainers and pencil case at school, and then I carried that on, and I ended up talking to Rob Roy Collins on the street, because I was getting more into it and stuff by then. I was probably like 15. When I was talking to Rob, and he said you should do your magic on the streets and do a street show. So I did a magic street show, which wasn't very good.
How did you meet Rob?
I met Rob because he's also from Newcastle, and I saw him doing street shows on Northumberland Street. And because I was a fellow busker, because I went around the bars working for tips and stuff, I went over to him after watching him 3 or 4 times over the course of a couple of weeks. I would go over afterwards and say, oh, that was really good, blah, blah, blah. And now I've realised I shouldn't have done that, because that's when he was taken in the hat. I should have waited an extra couple of minutes. Oh, yeah, cheers, mate. Yeah, thanks. That was it.
Yeah.
So I kind of learned that, and then I ended up having a chat with him, and he helped me put a street show together, and we started going in his van to places like Leeds together and York together.
Wow, so he really took you under his wing then?
Yeah, Rob taught me how to do street shows.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's big thanks to Rob then, I take it.
Massive thanks to Rob Roy Collins. And he taught me how to do it and all that. And then
so let's take this slower. How did you feel when you first started watching Rob doing his shows? When you saw him gather a crowd and get the crowd cheering for him?
Well, I've always been into show business since I was 10 years old. That's, since I learned my first magic trick, I've been going to see. I went to see Paul Daniels when I was 12 years old at the Whitley Bay Playhouse Theatre. And it was then, when I was watching the master at work on stage, it was then that I realised that this is what I wanted to do for a living. When I was watching Paul Daniels do his show, I thought to myself, that's what I want, a bit of that. That's what I want to be. I want to be up there with a touring magic show, making people laugh, entertaining everybody with a good, solid magic show. And that's what I wanted to do.
And so when you're watching Rob, and Rob's got a very solid, very concise street show. It's a show that's perfectly designed to do what it needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the most exciting artistic piece of work ever. It's not something that I think someone who's been doing shows for 20 years would be excited by, but it's a perfectly functioning street show. So as young you watching, what do you think when you're watching it? You've watched big stage magicians and stuff like that. What's your impression from watching Rob and seeing this, probably the biggest street show you saw at that time?
Well, it's probably the first escapologist that I'd ever seen. I doing a chain escape, and I was captivated by that, and I loved the whole thing where he's gonna move his shoulder and get out the chain and all that, and I thought it was great. I loved watching everyone's reaction I loved the show. I loved that he started with absolutely nothing and ended up with this big gig, and he got paid at the end of it. It's a show that's as you say, it's you know, I guess some street performers wouldn't get overly excited about all of the skills involved and everything in the show. But hey, it's a business, and Rob's a good businessman, and it works.
He's a very good businessman, and it works. It's really reliable. You know, it doesn't fail. It does what it says on the tin, without question.
There's a lot of people that concentrate on the show. There's two words to show business. A lot of people concentrate on the show and don't think about the business. These hippies that you see in the park juggling 12 knives, brilliant, amazing, but they've got no concept of how to turn their skill into money. So they'll always just be a hippie getting stoned in the park juggling 12 knives, which is amazing. But if they had that, if they treat that other side of the word to show business with equal sort of time and practice, then they'd be very rich people.
How fascinating. So you and Rob are traveling around. He's took you on his wing. He's shown you how to do shows. How does your show begin the first time that Rob says, go do a street show of magic? What are you doing?
I was doing cards across with an appearing 10-foot pole. I know that. What the hell? I did this. I started with a fake sword swallow, which I still do. And then I did, I don't know, a few... I did equal and equal ropes, where you've got a short, medium, and long rope, and they all become the same size. I did cards across, which is when two spectators come up from the audience. Someone has a pile of 10 cards, the other person has a pile of 10 cards, and then you invisibly, magically transfer some cards from one person to the other through the air. And I incorporated a 10-foot appearing pole with that because I got someone else to hold the pole, and when one card went from the other person, it went up and around the pole, and then it was just, I can't remember. That was probably my finale. I can't really.
And how was you gathering a crowd?
How was I gathering a crowd then?
By
then blowing a whistle and saying everybody come and watch me the same way that I do it now.
Okay, and so how did you feel when you were first doing it? You've done close-up magic quite a bit, so you're not new to performance, but you are new to street performance, and it is a different thing.
Yeah, I was overly enthusiastic about it, and I just jumped into it and did it and cracked on. And mint, I've just done a show and got £8. Legend, you know, like I'm the man. Let's do it again.
So you weren't nervous. You weren't hard on yourself.
No, I don't get.
Nervous. No, you didn't get this feeling of like killing doing table magic. You're quite a skilled, honed, close-up magician at this point, having to go back to the beginning again. That wasn't frustrating.
Well, I started off doing close-up magic at the table for my show, so smaller tricks, and then I pushed people back and did the bigger tricks to get the people on my side to start with. But
if you're making £8 in a half-an-hour show, as opposed to making, doing a couple of hours and making £200 doing close-up, it
was different. It was. I was doing a real show, you know, and this was, you know, the bars and nightclubs in Newcastle on, you know, busy or whatever at 12 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday. So this was a way to get more gigs in, if you like, to make more money and to do more.
And what were the challenges? What were you struggling with when you went out to do that? What was the things you had to overcome?
The show wasn't very good. It wasn't that I wasn't. Well, I was inexperienced when it comes to performing. I'd performed on stage before, and I'd performed close-up before, but I wasn't a stage pro. And I was a close-up pro, but I was a street novice. So the challenges that I had to overcome and stuff at the beginning was I could get a crowd, but they kept walking away. I didn't have an amplifier to start with or a microphone. The show wasn't very good. It wasn't very solid.
But why do you think the show wasn't good? What do you think was the failings of that show?
I guess it was there was nothing big. There was nothing that really made a noise. There was no music. There was no mic. There wasn't. It would have been. I could go out and do that show now, and it'll be great, and I can do it for about 30 people probably, and it would be good, you know. Wouldn't be like a big money hat or anything, but I could go out and do
It'd be a fun time.
same show better. But it just wasn't that good. It was just, why do the appearance 10 football and put it in the middle when you're doing cards across? And it just wasn't. It was just a bit naff.
And so, how did you improve?
And
how
I didn't look the part. I was wearing a Superman T-shirt and my school trousers or something. You know, like it didn't. I in a suit jacket. It didn't look good. I had one of those. I had an aluminium case from B&Q and one of those waiter stands. You know, the silver kind of cross things that fold out that you put a big plastic tray on when you're in a posh bar. I stole it actually from a bar, from outside a bar, in an airport or something. But I've still got it. So I had that with my case on top of it, which looked okay. It was just a bit shit, you know. It wasn't. I didn't look good. The props didn't look good. Nothing was big enough. Nothing made a noise. Nothing.
So how quick was the evolution? How quickly did you start learning the tricks and start putting together a more successful street show?
Well, I said to Rob, I said, this isn't very good. I'm not. And then it got to the point that it wasn't like, oh, mint, I've just made it quick. I was like, it's not going up. I'm not, you know, the hats aren't going up. It's not very good. I'm not. This is. So Rob said, well, look, why don't you do an escape like me? Because I do a chain escape and it's a really good way. You can get some height on it and people can see it and it's a big thing. So do your magic and then do an escape. I said, right. He said, well, what else can you do? Have you got any other ideas or whatever? We sat for a few hours, you know, in his flat in Newcastle. And then I just said, oh, well, actually, Rob, I can do like, you know, all this sort of stuff, you know, like make me elbows touch each other and clap in the middle. And I can do this and skip with my arms and dislocate my shoulders. And he went, why didn't you tell me this 3 months ago? Like, that's your show, man. Do a quick trick, do your weird things with your body, and then do an escape at the end. There you go. So I started doing that. And the crowds were big. I got the amplifier and microphone. People were like, whoa. And it worked. So then I went all over the country and went out to like Galway and places like that for the Arts Festival and stuff when I was 16. And then 15, 16, I was doing that. Working the South Bank in London and things. And then when so I was doing all that, and then when I was in Torquay again, back in Torquay, I went down there and I was performing on the street, and a guy from a local bar called Albert's came over to me at the end of the show, and he said, that was brilliant. I've got a talent show in my bar tonight. Would you like to be part of it? And I said, yeah, definitely. So I turned up and it was all singers and then me in this pub. So I won and I got through to the semi-final, which was the next night in the same pub, and I won with 2 other people or something. And I got through to the grand final, which was the next night.
In the same pub?
In the same pub. Well, I didn't win. There was
must have been a good singer there then.
Well, there was a singer as a judge, someone from a local radio station, and an entertainment agent called Anne George from Trevor George Entertainment. And I didn't win the competition, but afterwards, Anne George said, I could book you. Do you do hour-long shows in theatres? I said, well, I'm a street performer and I do about half an hour. Says, well, if I book you to do 100 gigs, do you think you could do an hour around the holiday parks? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, okay. So I agreed a deal with her there. And I think it was the summer holidays when I was 16. I went round all the holiday parks on the south coast. And at the beginning of the run, I was like a street performer, awkwardly, gangly, bouncing onto stage and you know, getting everyone to shout and bawl and go mental. And then by the end of the season, I had a solid stage show together, and it was a bugger because I didn't drive. I was 16. I didn't drive, and the gigs were like designed for someone who drove. So I'd be in Torquay one night, and then I'd be in Bournemouth the next night. Then I'd have to go to Newquay the next night. Then I'd be back to Torquay, and then I'd be up in the Cotswolds. Then I'd be down to Hayling Island. Then
how is that economically viable if you're doing it on public transport everywhere?
The trains are really cheap. I had a under 16 rail card or something, and it was 15 years ago. And it was cheap, and I booked them all well in advance because they were all booked in like March or something, and the gigs weren't until June, July, August, September.
So you're spending like a good 2-3 hours, 4 hours a day in between every show traveling.
Longer sometimes. If you had to go from like Penzance to Hayling Island, for example, or if you had to go from, Newton Abbot or Exeter to Bournemouth, and it was a Sunday, and the trains were closed for repair, and you'd have to get like some days it was like 3 trains, a coach, and 2 taxis.
And how did you feel about your life at this point?
Rock and roll. I was getting pissed every night. I was 16. It was free. I went round drinking and I had a great time, and it was mint.
Yeah.
It was fine. I'd just be
it sounds like
on the transport, and then when I got to the next venue, I'd have a few more beers to pick us up, and then do my show, but I got home at the end of the season, back to my grandparents who brought us up, who I lived with, and I was a mess. I was like an alcoholic, and I was 16, smoking, drinking, all that, and I was just picking myself up and getting myself down, picking myself.
Did you save money? Did you have savings from this tour?
Yeah. I ended up in a
you didn't burn it all?
No, I kept it all, most of it, because all the booze was free and the accommodation was free, and I'd make friends with the chefs and things and wing some food, and I'm very healthy, but I didn't spend very much money at all. So I kept it all. But when I was going to do all these holiday parks as well, you have to remember that some of the parks I was booked to do 3 in the same area in a row, and over 3 days some nights. So if you're doing that in Bournemouth or Torquay or Newquay or something like that, I was going out and doing street shows every day.
So you were making extra money on the street shows as well?
And then after the holiday parks, sometimes I was going out and working the bars.
So you're really busy, Are you working?
Yeah.
Are you working because you really enjoyed doing shows? Are you working because you wanted to make more money? What was your drive this time? What was in your head?
A nice big house.
Well, you got a nice big house now, eh? You succeeded.
It's taken us this long to get it.
And was that the drive? Was that the thing that was on your mind? There was this goal of I want to have the big pad.
Purely materialistic. I wanted a nice big house. I wanted not to have to worry about money, and I wanted to travel the whole world. So I've traveled the world, making money, saved up the money, and bought the house.
Okay, and that was in your mind at the time when you're going out and having a good. So you were putting money aside. You were saving. You was thinking, right, here's another opportunity to get some money, put it aside.
The whole
time to get the goal.
The whole time. I've always had a shit car. First car was a 1996 red Corsa, which I wrote off by accident, and then after that, I had a black.
Not many people write their car off on purpose.
True. I had a black Nissan Micra, and then I had a black Golf, and then a black Corsa. That's my history of cars.
So you like the colourful cars then? You like colourful cars then?
They're just black. I like black ones.
Yeah. So you're touring around. You say you've never spent out on big flashy things. You didn't want to have flashy things at that time. You were focused on the goal of getting the house in the end, right?
I mean, when I say big flashy things, I meant car. Like I'm into sort of collectibles and memorabilia, and I've got quite a good collection that I've been collecting for years, all sorts of stuff, and buy like nice clothes and things like that. But I've never splashed out on any like I've regularly spent 100 quid or 200 quid on something, but I've not really splashed out on like, you know, a 40,000 pound car or anything. You know, I've just kept little tin cans running around the roads and saved up.
Yeah. And so you finish this first tour, you go back home, you're a bit of a wreck. What do you do? Do you look for more gig work? Do you go back to work in the street? What was the trajectory for you then at 16?
Well, I left school to become a full-time magician, and I rang all of the bars and nightclubs and things like that. I rang all the hotels and stuff like that, and said, "Hi, I'm a magician. Would you like me to be your resident magician? I'll come in, I'll do your Sunday dinners, I'll do the weddings, I'll do the functions, the corporate events you've got, all that. Sorry, we already use such and such. Sorry, we already use this guy. Bring another one. Sorry, we've already got a one. He's called such and such." It was the same 2 or 3 names cropping up all the time. So since I couldn't do, since I couldn't really do much in the way of bookings until they came to me, I just carried on working the bars and doing street shows. And that was so it hadn't quite panned out the way I thought it would. When leaving school, I thought, well, I'll get loads of bookings and stuff, but I didn't. So it was just street shows and bars for years.
And
obviously I was handing out business cards, so I did get occasional gigs in.
And so when you work in the street, you're mostly doing it in Newcastle? Are you traveling around a lot? Are you being itinerant in your lifestyle of street performance, or are you just settled and hunkered down in Newcastle, working that pitch?
I overplayed Newcastle, overplayed it, I hammered it. It got to the point where if I was in the queue in the back of a shop, someone was on the phone and they were saying like, "Oh yes, I'll meet you in 10 minutes. Where do you want to meet?" "I'll meet you next to where that bloke gets out of a straight jacket." "Right, I'll meet you there." Got to that point.
Yeah, you were a fixture. You were like a statue.
And I could tell by the hats.
They went down.
Yeah. So I started getting the train to York, or driving to York, or and then go to Leeds, and then go to Manchester.
How many years do you think it was before you burnt out Newcastle?
Let's think about it. Probably 18 months.
18 months. And how many shows were you doing there? Was it every weekend or was it every day?
It was like every day, 3 a day.
Okay. And it was enough after 18 months that everybody knew in that city who you were?
Probably enough after 6 months.
Okay.
But I kept going.
And how did your work advance in that time? Because personally, at least, my street shows changed continuously over time. Was your show changing in that time, or did you get a set show and just bang it out?
Still do the same thing now, apart from the contortion, which I've stopped doing.
Why?
My shoulders. I had 10 years of being a dislocation act, and you know, you've seen it, and it's fast track to arthritis. So my shoulders now are sore all the time, and the cold, the agony. Claire, my girlfriend, she's got to give me shoulder rubs all the time.
Oh, you poor thing.
I've knacked them.
I could believe it. I was talking to
a magician yesterday called the Great Kavari, and he said something that was quite interesting. It was good advice, and I guess I wish I'd heard it. And well, if I'd heard it, I wouldn't listen. But now I can understand what he's saying. He said he went to see the circus rehearsing a show that he was on. He went to a circus with his mentor Rodolfo from Hungary. 2 Hungarian magicians they are, and George Kavari's mentor said, "You see that guy walking up those ladders with the stick balanced on his chin, with a tray, with a bowl, with a pineapple, with another pineapple, with a sword on top, and he's walking up those ladders." He said, "Well, it just takes him one little slip, and that sword could come down and injure him. You know, it could go through him. And every night he's going out there, or every day he's going out there twice and putting his life on the line for entertainment, for the show. And Kavori's mentor was saying this to him, and he said, he's doing that every day, putting his life on the line for the show. Me, well, I go out with 2 wooden sticks and a piece of rope, and I do a magic trick, and I get paid the same amount. Oh, fair enough. Why go Dyson with your life when you can make the same amount of money by just doing a magic trick?
Interesting. One could argue maybe that the guy who's balancing the sword doesn't just do it for the money. He does it for the exhilaration, the excitement, the love of the craft that he's part of. But still, the point stands.
Yeah.
So you go around, you're doing street shows around in Newcastle. You start going to other places. What year are you at? Are you 18 yet? Have you got legal to drink at this point?
I don't know. There was a few lost years. I don't know. Just between the age of 15 and 20, I was doing bars, nightclubs, and street shows.
And so what changed at 20?
More venue shows.
Why did you end up doing more venue shows? Was that an active thing you were trying to make happen? Did you decide that? Did you fall into it?
Well, it's what I always wanted to do, isn't it? I wanted to get bookings. That's what I wanted to do. But then when I rang everybody to say hire me, they were already using someone else, so I had to just go out and do street shows.
But why 5? Why the 5 years from 6 or 4 years at least, from 16 up to 20?
Because
why that for 4 years?
It took a long time to carve a good reputation, or the market for magicians in Newcastle at the time was saturated. There wasn't any work for me because all the other magicians already had the gigs.
And did you not look at setting up in a different city maybe, or was that not an option? Did you not want to do that?
I didn't want to do it. So I lived with my nan and granddad. I lived with them, and it was mint. And I'm quite happy in Newcastle. I still am. So no, I don't. I never really thought about that.
You just keep cracking on it in Newcastle and make it happen. I
don't mind traveling for gigs, but I would never thought of relocating. I mean, you knew me when I was in that flat in Soho on Wardour Street. Yeah. So hanging out the window a few times.
Yes.
And that's a different area. I was in London. I lived on Wardour Street in central London for 6 months.
I'm not saying you were sedentary or you didn't leave or anything. I was just interested you said that Newcastle was saturated. And so the thought wasn't, I'm going to try and make these shows happen somewhere else. The thought was, I need to raise my profile in Newcastle until I can get shows there.
Yeah,
that's what I was interested in.
That's exactly what it is, and that's still the same today. I'm still doing that. I'm still raising the game. How many other magicians around here have written a children's Christmas storybook?
None, but they'll all do it next year now.
Well, I was first.
Yeah, there you go. So you've got the 4 years from doing that. You've done the street shows for 4 years. You started doing stage work when you're 20. Mm-hmm. Tell us about how that begins. Tell us about what the step forward was.
Well, the step forward was getting noticed when I was 16 to work the holiday parks. And then I was practicing both street show and stage show between the age of 16 and 20 and still doing the close-up.
How are you practicing the stage show?
By getting bookings. I did some open mic nights and things like that, but I was getting bookings. So when I was 13, working the bars, I had professional business cards printed then. Nice, not like Vistaprint things. I had really good business cards.
What do you mean, not like Vistaprint? What's a really good business card then?
A really good business card is something with your logo on and nobody else's. That's good quality, that feels good, that's a good business card.
Okay, carry on, mate. Sorry.
And the good business card was, here's a nice story. A guy called Ian Robinson from Millennium Balloons used to live the next street up from my grandparents' house where I lived. And I used to go out and walk his dog with him when I was like 12 and 13 and stuff. And he gave me lots of advice about business, as a businessman. And he said, listen, Chris, everyone you meet needs to get a business card, who you perform to. Do you have any business cards? And I said, nah, I don't. He said, right, you need to get some. He said, if you can go out this weekend or whatever and raise 75 quid to get some business cards, because they're on offer at the minute for £150 at printing.com, who had a shop in Newcastle. He said, if you can raise £75, I'll match it. And I was like 12 or something. I'll match it. And you go into the shop with your £75 next week and say that Ian from Millennium Balloons has sent you. You've got the 75 quid and you want to get your business cards designed there and printed. So I said, that's very kind of you, thank you. So I went out, made the money, went to the printers, walked in. Ian from Millennium Balloons has sent us to get some business cards designed and printed. We sat there, designed them, sent them to print. And then I took my 75 quid out and he said, no, Ian's already paid for them. So then I went to Ian and I said, I turned up to the shop and they said, you've already paid for it. He says, yeah, but I wanted to make sure that you were willing to work.
Oh, what a nice bloke.
So that was good, a good way of doing it. So, yeah, business cards are important. Flyers, posters, badges, stickers, T-shirts, branding, merchandising, promotion, marketing. It's half the battle. It's if you have all that in place, you could be a hopeless act and do loads of bookings all over the world.
Yeah,
I've seen them.
Really? So it's what people who are quite capable at promoting themselves, just not capable of show. They've got the business, but not the show.
Yeah, you've got to have both. If you've got the show and you haven't got the business, then you don't make any money and you can't afford to do the show, and that's it. If you've got the business but you haven't got the show, you can make some money short term, but then once the word gets out that you're shit, you're not going to get that many more bookings.
Well, I suppose
you've got the show and the business.
This is the thing: is the street is kind of a refuge for those that have more show than business, because you don't have to go through those hoops. If you've got a good show, you can go out on the street, you can gather a group of people, you can do that show to them there and then. But if you don't have the business, you'll never get off the street to doing the stages and stuff. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah.
So, carry on, mate. Sorry.
So I used to always do, in Edinburgh, for example, I used to always do the full run of the Fringe. I'd be doing a street show nearly every day, and then I would do the venue show in the evening.
When did you start doing that? How long into your career were you doing Edinburgh?
I've done Edinburgh about 14 years.
How old are you now?
15 years. I'm 31 now. I think my
so
first Edinburgh was
16 then. 15.
15,
okay, so you're doing Edinburgh throughout all of this time. What was your first Edinburgh like?
Oh, mint. Dead exciting. It was like, the best place you can be in the world at that time. Performers everywhere, people everywhere, shows going on everywhere. It was class. Me and Rob, the first time I went to Edinburgh, me and Rob were sitting in a burlesque and cabaret show, and there was some really, really strange acts on the bill. And I said to him,
what do you mean by strange acts?
Now, I would probably think they were great. At the time, we were sitting there going, what is this we're watching? I think there was a girl crawling around the audience dressed as a cat, and everyone was stroking her and things like that. And then on stage, there was a woman putting the pins through her cheeks and all that sort of stuff. And then there was like a burlesque dancer smothering herself in custard or something. And it was just like, it was a proper mint variety show. It was great. I'd love to go now, but it was at the time, me and Rob were sitting there going, there's 2,000 shows going on right now in the city that we're in. We've ended up here, and it was a case of
You're a bit too green to appreciate how different what you were at was.
Yeah, and what I hadn't had the experience of working with many other performers and doing all of these cabaret and variety shows when I was 15.
Yeah.
So now I think it's great. I'm probably actually friends with some, if not all, of the performers I saw that night.
So did you do shows that first year?
Yeah.
And how were the shows that first year? Were they successful? Did you understand how to work an Edinburgh crowd?
Can't remember. I think I worked the alcoves doing the contortion act, and it was popular, and it was very busy because there's a guy standing there dislocating his shoulders, and I didn't have to be a good performer. There were quick, short shows. I think I did 2 shows per slot. Let's say we got 20 minutes in the alcoves. I did
so you did
2
10-minute
shows.
Bam, bam.
Contortion, sword, contortion, straight jacket. Bam, bam, bam. Money. So yeah, I think it was dead successful, and I had to pull people in, and they were saying, Chris, if you draw crowds like this, you're gonna have to go and do the circle shows and blah blah blah. So I learned how to control the crowd better and what to do, and how, and obviously by lengthening my show and not doing 2 in an alcove slot and doing 1 in an alcove slot, there was walk-offs, and it worked. It got better.
And so why did you not want to go and do the circle pictures? I'd imagine somebody would actively want to go and do the bigger, more high status spaces with bigger crowds.
I guess I wasn't nervous. I don't really do the nervous thing. I got nervous notably once, and that was when I went and did Prince Harry's Christmas party for him and about 50 of his friends. I didn't realise it was Prince Harry's Christmas party until I got to the gig and was told about it by a security guard who'd been working us out for about 45 minutes before the show. But anyway, that was a nervous one.
What do you mean he was working you out?
Oh, I mean, there's a guy, he's kind of vetting me. There's a guy in the sort of holding area, which was full of nice food and things. And he's chatting away to us. Oh, how are you? Oh, how long have you been doing magic? Oh, what have you been doing? And I think, after 45 minutes, he knew that I wasn't mental. I didn't have a gun. Everything was fine. I was just there to do a show. And then when they told us that it was, for Prince Harry, it was like, whoa, hang on a minute. And I got really quite nervous for a couple of minutes, and I got my shit together and I went in, nailed it. But
how long ago how far into your career was you when that had happened?
I was 21.
So it's not far off where we are now. I mean, we're talking about Edinburgh, you were 15, so it's quite a long time before that. But you're still doing street shows in Newcastle at this point and around the north of the UK. It's not like you'd form this huge career at this point, right?
21 was a bit of a turning point, 2010. So I'd been building up my close man.
I'll tell you what, before we go to the turning point of 2001, just to keep some chronology to what we're doing, let's get to 21. We'll touch on that. We'll remember that figure 21 to hit back to. Let's talk about Edinburgh. Let's finish Edinburgh a little bit more, and then we'll move on to being 21 then. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
cool.
fine.
So you're in Edinburgh, you're doing your first year, you're doing your shows.
Yeah. Street shows. I didn't do a venue show.
Okay.
It was just street shows. And then I went to see some of the venue shows, and I worked out what the PBH Free Fringe was. And it was a way of getting an extra street show in an evening in a venue and getting a bit more kind of publicity about it and getting reviewers in and getting a bit more press and photographers and all that. And it was a bit more glamorous and doing a street show, turning up a decadent venue like the Voodoo Rooms to perform an hour-long show with people that are there to watch you, So I was doing, the street show most days, and then the venue show. That was when I was.
So that's the second year you started doing the venue show, right?
Yeah.
And did you start off in the Voodoo Rooms?
No, I started off in the Hive on Nidri Street, which is now called the Banshee Labyrinth, and I was in a cave, and it was wild.
What do you mean by it was wild? Explain.
It was crazy. It was a tiny little sweatbox cave, and I piled the people in. You'd get like 70 people in a room that seats 30. I had them sitting on the floor. I had them standing with their backs against the wall, crouched over because they couldn't, because of the caves. People standing like this for an hour, like that for an hour, packed in, out the door, in the corridor. Absolute health and safety.
How did you get so many people in there?
Nightmare.
Because I've heard the problem with doing a free fringe event is that so many people, and I've done this a few years, where I go with a friend and we do, in Fight Club, the movie Fight Club, where the guy goes to other people's therapy groups to feel their pain. Well, we'd go to free fringe shows where no one else would turn up, and you'd be the only 2 or 3 people in the room watching someone just on stage desperately trying to go through the motions of their show. And it was just some weird catharsis to sit and watch that. People struggle to get people in their venues. They have empty rooms every day, and you can see them break. They change as the month goes on to hopelessness by, the third week of getting nobody inside. You're getting 70 people in your venue. How are you doing it? What's the difference?
I've never had a quiet free fringe show. I've always been busy. I promoted during the street show. After the street show, before the venue show, I would flyer for it. But not in an annoying way for hours on the day. I'd probably do 2 hours before the venue show, in truth. And, my line would be, come and see my show. It's free, but it's not shit. And then give them a leaflet. And then because the leaflet was good, well designed, good photo, not like a shit business card, not with Vista print on it, because it was a good professional flyer and it said what I'd done and who I was and how good I was and how good I thought I was. And, this flyer sold the show, and it was free and people came.
Cool. But you worked hard, essentially. This is the running point for all of this, is that you had something you wanted to achieve and you worked hard to it. You didn't do half measures. You made professional things to surround what you were doing, and you did. Not everybody does 2 hours for their gigs. A lot of people will do like half an hour here, or they'll pay someone to do an hour somewhere. They don't put the time in. So in the first year you're doing the free fringe, it's a success for you, yeah?
Yeah, every year.
And do you do the Banshee Lounge the year after?
I did Nidley Street, which was Nickel Edwards. Think I did it again the year after. Then I've done the Globe 1 year. I've done the Hive 1 year. And other than that, it's been the Voodoo Rooms.
And you said that you get a better room if you keep going back there year after year and showing that you can do a good show there. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yeah. It comes down to the venue feedback. So if the venue say you're really good, you're getting the people in, you're a nice guy, you're not a dick, then, and I was getting pissed with the venue managers and having a good time and all that. And we got on, there's no hassle, no problem. And the shows were full. We were turning people away. Wild.
Which is what they want. They want to have the full venues, don't they?
Of course they do.
Because then they sell more drinks. Yeah.
That's how they make the money.
And so, do you understand about doing a stage free fringe show more? Does the show change over the years of doing it, or is the show the same when it went in as when it came out? 4 years later.
It's changed. The stage show's changed, and now it would be a completely different show to what it was when I first started. It changes a bit every year because you get locals who come along and watch every year.
Okay, and so you want to put in different new things in, so
you've got to keep them coming. You've got to keep them interested. You've got to, you can't just say. And a lot of my show then was abuse.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, insulting the audience for an hour. And it was all kind of like held together by the fake sword swallow, few card tricks, the contortions, and then an escape at the end. So it was that was just those props I was armed with to really be given an hour of abuse. to the audience.
And when you say abuse, are you just calling someone a cunt, or is it more constructive than that?
More constructive than that, and getting them to down drinks and go crazy and pour a pint over the head and everyone will cheer and stupid shit. Just getting them really like riled up and
So it's
ready
quite
to rock.
a party atmosphere.
Yeah, it was almost like a warm-up act for like the Prodigy.
And were you living that kind of lifestyle at the same time? It sounds like you were having a good time, having a few drinks in each of the bars when you're doing the gig.
Yeah. Probably since I was 15. Yeah.
And you, if I'm right in thinking this, you'd built quite a rock and roll persona of yourself. In your show, your promo at that time had you with lots of naked ladies on a flyer and lots of bottles of spirits sitting around on a flyer. So you basically portrayed yourself as a rock and roll star. Is that fair?
Yeah, that is, yeah.
And do you still do that now?
Nah.
Why?
Completely changed. I'll tell you why. We need to go back to me being 21 in 2010.
Okay, so it's a perfect little segue in then. There we go.
So to recap, between the age of 13 and 21, I'd got into magic from a mate at school showing us some tricks, started working the bars, then got some holiday park gigs, put a street show together, and then got a stage show together. And nothing that exciting really happened. But in 2010, when I was 21, because I'd been hacking away at this from learning my first trick at 10 to now performing a lot, 11 years later, in January, I was booked to do the World Buskers Festival in Christchurch. In February, I was booked to do the burlesque and cabaret clubs during the Valentine's season in Paris. In March, I was at the Bahrain Formula One. In April, I was a paid guest on Greece's Got Talent, backwards and forwards to Athens. In May, I went to America and I was performing in New York and Los Angeles and going to the Magic Castle every night and getting drunk on Sunset and all that. Got back to England. June and July, did all the music festivals, Glastonbury, you name it, all those big festivals.
And did you do all this stuff through an agent? Did you have an agent that was supplying you with all these gigs?
Everything was through me. And then in August, I did the Edinburgh Fringe Festival yet again. And then September, October's corporate stuff, November's quiet, December's all the Christmas party gigs. What a good year. That was massive. Every year I was getting bigger and bigger and better and better. The money was going up, the profile was going up. And then in 2011, I mean, how do you follow that, you know? In 2011, quiet. Very quiet. Not much in the diary at all. No big exciting gigs. Why? Because I forgot that I was a variety performer and magician extraordinaire. And instead, I thought I was Mick Jagger. I thought I was some kind of rock star. I was on these flights. I was drinking all the free booze. I was rocking and rolling all over the world with my show. And then I guess I was just a dick.
What do you mean by the fact you're a dick? That you weren't respectful to the people in the venues around and word got about, or?
Probably that. Probably a lot of things. Going way over my time because I think, well, they've hired me because they want me, and you know, they should think themselves lucky if I want to do an extra 15 minutes. It doesn't work like that in a show. You got to stick to your time, or it messes everything up. You've got to pay all the people in the theatre another hour, and all that. And loads of things. Look, for lots of reasons, I think I was just a bit of a knob when I was 21.
Do you think that's all because, for one, you've had this increasing success, but also because you've developed this idea of you being Mick Jagger, that all this other stuff kind of carried itself and rolled itself with it, that whole identity?
Hand in hand, definitely went hand in hand. And I bought my first house when I was 21. I got a tattoo when I was 21. I'd seen the world when I was 21. I was living the dream when I was 21. it was just a good year,
And so, what happened to you then this next year when it's obvious that things aren't going the way you'd imagine? I think, am I right in thinking that when you were 21, you imagined that life was going to be your life from now on? That's what my life's like.
Yeah, but I'd be dead now. I would have died. I would have died living like that. So I'm pleased it's not like that. I would have died. I think it took me a while to realize why I didn't have the work. It took a number of months to realize why I didn't have the work. And once I realized, it took us a few months to make changes. And
what were those changes that you made over those few months then?
Stop getting pissed before, during, after gigs. I have a few drinks now. It's fine. I've got it all under control. To stop smoking, to stop doing anything that's related with badness and bad image, and I've completely rebranded everything. New logo, new website. Everything got rebranded. New costume.
Why did you rebrand? For instance, the brand that you had before, was that specifically designed as a young rock and roll-esque kind of character? Was that
it became that? Yeah. I mean, there was a tagline, and it was the rock and roll of cabaret. That was on my flyer. But then when I was 21 in that year, I was also doing Prince Harry's Christmas party. So when I reinvented myself, was it 2012 or 2013, the Prince Charles state visit? 13. So in 2010, I'd done the Prince Harry thing. 2013, I did the Prince Charles thing. Between that, I had a few other nice little bookings. So I started selling myself as the royal magician, as opposed to the rock and roll of cabaret.
And so that's how you rebranded yourself, because I know.
And that's what, sorry?
And is that how you rebranded yourself? Because I've noticed watching your images change over the years that you seem a lot softer, happier, more smiley in your promotional pictures now than you did back then. Back then, it seemed, back then it was the kind of slumping, contrapost kind of thing,
Yeah, I mean, back then, the top and bottom of it is I'd had progressing, elevating success. And then in 2010, I got all these amazing bookings. I lived it up. And then in 2011, it came crashing down. Took me a while to realize why. And at that point, in 2011/2012, I decided that I wasn't actually not just... I wasn't just not happy with the way my career was at that time. I was also, it was a wake-up call, and I was unhappy with my own lifestyle, the person I'd become, the way my show was. Now I wouldn't dream of doing all that in a show and calling people names and things like that. Now it's nice. It's a nice magic show, and people come and enjoy themselves. Yeah, take the piss, have a laugh.
Why do you think you went down that path then? Just before we move on to the rebranding, becoming the Royal Magician, and what you do now, why do you think you moved into the path of being the bad boy?
I didn't move. It was a natural progression. If you don't have management, and you're a 15-year-old kid, and you on all these trains and planes and stuff every day, and you're going and getting pissed every day, and you're going and doing shows every night, and you're getting big full rooms, 400 people every night in these sold out holiday parks during the summer, then you don't aim. It was a natural progression. I was a kid without any guidance or management when I was out by myself.
And I assume that when you do the naughty things, when you call someone a cunt, or when you get someone to down a drink and everyone cheers, you get reward for that, right? the crowd rewards you for that kind of behaviour in the short term.
Everyone is part of the show as the audience, and I involved the audience in my show. I was just the conductor of the madness.
And so they're encouraging you to do it. And as a conductor, you can give more emphasis, or you can be very quiet and subdued. And it seems like the osmosis between you and the crowd at the time brought you to the point of being rude and crude and drunk and, you know, all this kind of stuff, right?
The audience would encourage them to have a rock and roll time. If you go and see, you know, Ozzy Osbourne or something, you're going to be throwing your rock and roll signs up and going and clapping and cheering because you want to see the show.
But then that's not.
Have you got the charge up there?
But then that's not necessarily something that's sellable in your marketplace in the wrong way. You can sell it in a Edinburgh show.
I got to the point that I wasn't bookable by anybody other than rock clubs, fetish clubs, or festivals.
Which is quite a small market.
Well, after the summer, you're finished, aren't you? Really, unless you do like a gig a month.
Yeah. And so you look at rebranding yourself. You've done these few gigs with the royal family. So you decide to rebrand yourself as the Royal Magician. How do you do that? How do you go about re-identifying yourself after all of these years and after developing work that is, you know, rock and roll?
You've got to, like I say, you've got to change your costume, change your brand, change your image, change your website.
But when you say you change your brand, how do you go about doing that? Did you look at it and write stuff down? Did you brainstorm? Did you go and see someone who's a branding expert? What was
I'm a branding expert. It goes from yellow and black to black and gold. It goes from wearing 3/4 length trousers and a vest to wearing a suit and a shiny bow tie and a hat. It goes from all sorts of stuff. I got sponsored by companies that were Royal Warrant holders, so they would provide the suit for free. They would supply the suitcase for free, and
then you'd have on your promotional stuff, you'd have a little write-up.
Sponsored by Royal Warrant holders, this company, this company.
Which gives status in and of itself, right?
Yeah, and they're happy to be promoting and on board with somebody like me because I'm turning up to very prestigious places, to very prestigious people with their, you know, soon to be prestigious or actually already prestigious products.
Yeah, and so you managed to rebrand yourself and reposition yourself. Does it happen overnight? Is it a quick change, or is it a bit of a slog?
Time, it's months and months, years and years. So it was probably 2014 really before my work picked back up.
And how did you know it picked back up? What was the big signs you could see that it was starting to?
You look at your bank account, you look at your diary, and if your diary's full and the bank's better, then you're busier.
Yeah, and so you just weren't getting the gigs before, and so how did you get to the point where you can reestablish yourself? Because people know you. They say Chris Crossy's that rock and roll guy, right? How do you get
to the point? You get to the point where you can reestablish yourself when you realize that you need to reestablish yourself. That's the point when you need to reestablish yourself.
But are you doing the same venues, but pushing to them and saying, "Look, let me come and do this show. It's a new show." Do you pivot to a new market and then work that new market and then spread back out from that new market again?
Well, you would obviously go for the people that have booked you in the past, because you've already got their details and they know who you are. And if they liked the show, or if they liked you as a person, then they'd hire you again. If you get fresh business, again, you're handing out lots of business cards and flyers and you gain a new contact who'll book you.
Yeah, cool, mate. And so after that, the career starts picking up again. I've seen stuff where you've done like a lot of promotional things with, was the one with Mike Tyson? Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, Mike Tyson. Well, again, it's just having a flair for marketing. I got hired, I got booked and paid to be at Mike Tyson's Sportsman's Dinner to provide a cabaret act, which was the Contortion and the Escape act.
And what year was this?
2014,
okay,
maybe 2013. It was 2013. So I got booked to do the act after dinner before his talk and Q&A session, but I got in touch with Mike Tyson's management and said, would Tyson be happy to tie me up in the straitjacket instead of getting someone from the audience? Will he do it? And he agreed. And I said that it would be like a bit of a strength competition because he'd have 90 seconds to tie me up and I'd have 90 seconds to get out. Oh, yeah, sure. No problem. Fine. See you there. Okay. So I went away and got a videographer. I hired a videographer to come along to record my part of the show. I got posters made, which were like old school boxing posters. It said Cross versus Tyson, the ultimate challenge of strength. Who will succeed? Age versus youth. And all that sort of stuff.
No,
and it was real.
This is already tickets already sold. There's no need for you to get posters to sell tickets to the event.
It wasn't my event. It was just a way to gain more publicity from the event that I'd been hired for. So
personal publicity. It raises your level of exposure, right?
I was getting paid to be there, the same amount. The event I didn't get a ticket cut, nothing. It was sold out. It had nothing to do with me really, but I just thought, well, this is a good opportunity to gain some promotion. So I got the posters made. I paid to get them printed. I put them up and took some on the night. Got paid a videographer to come along and all that. So, Tyson did it. I got out the straitjacket. He signed my poster. I put the video footage together, put it on YouTube. And then, a week or two later, ESPN got in touch and said, we've got Mike Tyson on Sports Nation, which is the biggest sports show in the world. You've got Mike Tyson sitting watching it, Jay-Z, Kanye West, all the big stars sit and watch Sports Nation in the big cribs and, in New York and California and places like that, all over the world. So they said, can we use your clip of Mike Tyson tying you in the straitjacket? And I said, yeah, sure. Negotiated terms. They put it on.
So when you say negotiate terms, is that how much they're going to pay you for the use of the footage?
That's the terms that I negotiate for them to use the footage. So it went on the TV, and so I've been on ESPN Sports Nation. That was quite good, seen by millions of people around the world. Now, if you think about it, this was just a booking. And I could have just turned up and done my show. But instead, I sent a press release out all about how that I was challenging Mike Tyson and all this in a contest of strength. A boxing magazine. It wasn't Ring magazine, but it was another one. And I can't remember what it was. They published an article saying cocky British opponent coaxes Tyson out of retirement.
That's a great little bit of promotion.
I was like, this is real, man. This is like happening in a week, And it was like I really promoted the hell out of me doing this challenge to Mike Tyson. And you're talking about it now. And that was 8 years ago?
7 years ago.
7 years ago?
Yeah. Well, maybe 8 years ago now, looking at the halfway through the year. Talk about it now, and what's incredible about it is your insight to capitalize from what could have just been for many people a gig. That could have just been a gig. You could have just gone, made your 200, 250 quid, however much you're charging, and gone home.
Yeah.
But you didn't. You made, as you said, this press circus, which is still remembered to this day.
Around the world.
Really interesting, mate. It's really interesting. I think it's something that people watching could feel inspired by. And, some of the young kids coming up, if they watch these videos, could take a lot of influence from that.
Good.
So you worked with Paul Daniels, your hero of your childhood. Saw him at 12, and you managed to work with him. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's like a lot of things in my life. If I've wanted to do something, like, you know, if I want to be on, I was working a lot of burlesque and cabaret clubs, and I wanted to be my big name at the top of the poster. I wanted my photo on the poster instead of everybody else's. I wanted a guy asked me a while ago to write an article about magic for a book, and I did, and I sent him it and never got in. So I wanted to be in the book, and that was a shame that I didn't get that. I wanted to, loads of things along the way. I've wanted to do stuff, and I've said, book me to do this. I'd love to do it. Book me to do this. I'd love to do it. You know, it's a bit like saying, book me to do a street festival. I'd love to do it, and please hire me to do a street festival, and it would be brilliant. And please book me, and they don't book you. So whenever that kind of thing happens to me, I don't take no for an answer and think, screw them guys, I'm going to write my own book. Screw those guys, I'm going to put my own variety show on and put my name the biggest at the top on my poster and my photo on. I'll call it the Crisscross Show, you know. And then, so, I forget the question you were asking, but
Paul Daniels.
So Paul Daniels, I said, hey, do you want to do shows together? Oh, sorry, I'm a bit busy. So I hired Paul to come and do a show with me.
And was it expensive? Was it a lot to hire Paul?
Well, I had to pay him, and we put the show on together, and it was actually a success, and we clicked, and we planned as a result of that a mutually beneficial tour in a number of venues, because we knew that the Crisscross and Paul Daniels featuring the lovely Debbie McGee magic show worked, and that we could make it work, and then it would be fine. And
why did it work?
Well, if I turned up and he liked each other, or we didn't get on, or we annoyed each other, or whatever, then it wouldn't have worked. But it went well.
But was there certain qualities of each of you that functioned together?
I was bringing in a young crowd. He was bringing in an old crowd. The old crowd had not seen me before. The young crowd hadn't seen him before. We're bringing, between us, we're bringing a massive audience age range of people. I'm using his pull as a celebrity status guy to be on the bill with, to increase my status and profile. He, I guess, is using my youth and current nowness to still be now himself.
I'm down with the kids. I'm down with the kids.
There you go. So it just worked. It was a good show. It sold out. It was good. We planned more, and he died.
Yeah, well, my condolences. It must have been,
very sad. Really pleased I got that show under the belt with him, and really pleased that he was keen to do a tour.
Yeah, it sounds great. And so David Blaine came. I would say it sounds great. The guy died. It wasn't great, but it sounds great that you had the opportunity at least.
Great opportunity.
And it's something that I imagine you thought about as when you were a child. To achieve that.
Definitely, dream come true. Doing a show with Paul Daniels.
And you've got David Blaine on your list as well, right?
Well, he was touring on the 5th of June 2019, and he was that was just last year, wasn't it? And he was at the Edinburgh Playhouse doing a show, and I wanted to go and see his show at the Edinburgh Playhouse, and I went along, and I got called up and asked to do some tricks.
Why were you called up? How did that work?
Well, it was a show called David Blaine.
Oh, wow. So Chris disappeared quite quickly there. Hopefully we'll get him back on. I'll give him a quick message here. I'd just like to say this, and it'll be touched upon again. I think Chris he's one of those guys that, sorry, 1 second, I'm doing multiple things. He's one of those guys that I saw him once in a drawer, and there was some Blue Peter people at the drawer wanting to film a couple of shows, and he was straight away chatting with them and talking and trying to get opportunities to be on the screen and work out, passing his cards. Never misses a trick. He works hard. He's constantly thinking how to promote himself. He's a hard worker. Anyone who looks at their life and wonders how they could be more successful as an entertainer could really do well from looking at the story, Chris, looking at the way he looked at it, the way he's capitalized, the way he's promoted, the way I assume he's researched. He must have looked at a lot of older performers and seen the way they promoted themselves. That whole getting Tyson in the straight jacket, selling it as a boxing thing, it harks of like old school hawking of a show. Right. Very, very impressive the way the guy handled himself through his life. I've been really, really interested in the interview so far. I'm just double checking if we're getting him back online. So has everyone enjoyed it? Put in the comments if you had a good time, if you enjoyed the interview so far. His hallway is massive. His hallway looked as big as my bloody house. It's amazing. As big as my boat. Incredible. Nice to see that Chris has done well with himself. Red and gold trimmings everywhere, eh? I wanted to touch on it more, but we didn't get a chance to chat more about it. I think it's particularly interesting, this idea that as a young person, he sold himself as this rock and roll performer, the rock and roll cabaret show. And then it wasn't necessarily just an act. It wasn't tongue-in-cheek. It wasn't done with self-reference, seeing it from the outside. It was done with sincerity, and it wasn't sustainable, and he had to and was capable to rebrand and rework himself. Let's see if we can get Chris back in the feed. We got there. Hey, Chris, are you back? I don't know if we can get him back in. We've definitely got him back on the page, but we've not got nothing there. So Chris has a lovely big house, but he has awful signal. So hopefully we've got him back in here now. If we can't get him back in, then we might have to ready to join. We've got another one. Let's put it in. Ah, there we go. How you doing, Chris?
Hi. Sorry,
nice
the signal's terrible.
Hey, no problems. So you were talking about David Blaine and getting asked to go on the stage.
That's right. So so I'll cut a long story short. I performed a few tricks with him on stage, and
just before we go on to this, how did you get to perform tricks with him on stage? Was it just the odds that he picked you up to come and do a trick, and you gone, by the way, I'm a magician, or was there some preparation to it?
No, it was another example of my cunningness. He needed a pack of cards from the audience, and I had a pack of cards and took them up to him and handed them to him, and he asked me to do a card trick, and I did a few card tricks, and then we closed the show by performing a card trick together.
Nice.
When he kind of were tuned in, and it ended up being quite a if you look on YouTube, you'll get a better idea of what happened, if you like. He actually came and sat in the audience to watch to watch the trick, and then he came back up, and then we did a closing trick together.
And so you put that together, you talked with his team, said, look, can we do this? This will be good. Is that how you got it to happen?
Well, it's all paperwork and things.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. And so is that the last real big high point you had in your career until this madness with COVID all started?
No. What was I doing last year? I've been staging the Greatest Show on the Tyne every year for the past 5 years.
What's the Greatest Show on the Tyne?
It's a variety show hosted by me, Chris Cross, the Great Magician of the North, featuring a dozen world-class variety performers such as knife jugglers, sword swallowers, dancing girls, prancers, singers, all sorts of stuff. So I put that on every year. It's an annual, almost like an annual Geordie, Saturday night at the Palladium, if you like. So it's a big variety show. It's like an annual tradition now, and people come every year. So I had that on last year. I was running a cabaret club in Newcastle called the Quayside Cabaret Club, which was good. And I did a tour of theatres, which I'd always wanted to do a tour and magic show ever since watching Paul Daniels when I was 12 years old, and I wanted to be that guy up there doing the magic show, touring his own comedy magic show. So I did a tour called Chris Cross, the Great Magician of the North, and there was me assisted by my girlfriend Claire. We had a roadie called Paul. The three of us went round and put on a show at 10 northern theatres, from the Wakefield Theatre Royal to the Georgian Theatre Royal in Richmond to the Stephen Joseph Theatre in Scarborough to the Tyne Theatre and Opera House in Newcastle, and all over the place. And it was good. And I also gave me opportunity to book support acts at each gig. So I booked some old school variety performers who I love and stuff, more comedians, because you don't want to put a knife balancing, juggling, acrobatic chimpanzee on before as a support act, because you could be somewhat of an anticlimax if you get someone like Steve Rowlands on. So I had who's done the show at the Tyne Theatre as part of the variety show, but I've had I had people like Jimmy Cricket on the bill, the Irish comedian, Bobby Pattinson, Finbar Healy, Stephen Peddy, lots of good comedians on. So it was great. I did 10 theatres with support.
And are you producing it yourself? Do you work with a producer to book the venues and that stuff, or is it all
me?
And you do it all you because it's cheaper, because you want to be in control of what you're doing?
Both. It's cheaper. I make more money at the end. I want to be in control of what I'm doing, and I'm creative enough to do it by myself, and I've got the business knowledge.
And did you have to acquire that business knowledge and the status to get into these venues and to be able to book these venues?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, you've got to go to the venue and say, oh, this is me, this is what I've done. They look at it and think, is this guy going to sell any tickets? Probably. Okay.
Yeah, because obviously they don't want to book you in and have the venue basically empty for a run.
They don't care if you're paying a higher fee. The bar does, but they don't care if they're getting a guaranteed amount. But if you're on a split, which is what you should always try and negotiate to get, then yes, they're concerned that the ticket sales, they might not even cover their costs.
And so a split is where they take part of the door and you take part of the door.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so do you ever touch the bar? Do you take a split the bar as well, or
no?
No, they do the bar.
It's often a different business.
Okay, interesting. And so you're doing that. How did it go? Was it the thing you wanted it to be?
It was class.
Yeah.
It was mint. It was like I would have just finished it this time last year. Loved it. It was successful. The reviews were good. It was a proper magic show with big colourful boxes getting people up, and it was like mint. It was a proper magic show, and it's what I wanted to do in the first place.
That must have felt great then, to be able to reach the point as a 12-year-old that you dreamed yourself of being in.
Yeah.
And so COVID kind of
we actually used I came across I was tipped off on a barn of abandoned, curious looking boxes in Wales, from a sort of distant friend of mine, and he said, all this looks like tricks or stage scenery or something. And he sent me some photos. I got in touch, sorted things out, because immediately from the photographs, I identified these objects in the photos as being one-off magic tricks, illusions, big tricks, trademark tricks that belonged to Paul Daniels that were built by his
Wow.
father.
The coincidence, eh?
So I went down, and everyone knows that I'm a collector of magic memorabilia and stuff like that. So I've got some of Tommy Cooper's props and all sorts. So we hired a sprinter, went down to Wales, filled the van. I've got Paul's iconic girl through glass that he pushed Penelope Keith through a big solid sheet of glass that's taller and wider than me. It's this big, huge glass prop. I've got his human cannon that he used on the Royal Variety performance in front of the Queen Mother. I've got about a dozen of his big tricks now. So it was really nice during this theatre tour to use one of Paul's big production boxes, which Claire jumped out of, and I restored it and got it nice. And so we used one of Paul's props. That was good. And then in February of this year,
before you go on, can I ask you to describe the experience of doing the thing you wanted to do when you were 12, when you watched Paul Daniels? Not just doing the thing you wanted to do, which what Paul Daniels was doing, being a touring magician in venues, but doing it with a restored piece of Paul Daniels equipment. It's more than good, surely. Can you explain how that felt a bit more?
It's epic. I mean, it's a bit like saying that you want to be a street performer, and then you want to be a sword swallower, and you'd really love to be, and then Shane the Space Cowboy gives you a sword and says, "There you go and do a show." It's kind of like that, I guess. It's like wanting to be a world famous guitar player and in your own band and do your own gigs, and then Mark Knopfler gives you a guitar.
Were you aware of how special it was when it was happening? And what did you feel, a sense of achievement? Just trying to get into that.
Yeah, I mean, the press story was all about me using Paul's props and coming to a theatre where the last time that prop was in some of those theatres were when Paul Daniels was performing with that prop in that theatre, which is crazy. So I totally understood what was going on at the time and played on that fact, but also relished and reveled in it at the same time.
It sounds amazing, mate, and I'm made up for you that you've managed to, put together the dream that you had. Because I remember seeing you in the rock and roll years in Edinburgh. We shared a flat together at some point through that.
We did for a season.
Yes, and I remember you talking about thinking about having to do something else and thinking about refocusing on the magic. I remember us talking from there.
Must have been 2011 or 2012, Matt.
It was around then. It's around then. And I'm made up that it's really worked out for you so well. Let's talk a little bit about. Yeah, well, it's been great, mate. And it's let's talk about a little bit about COVID now, because for most people, we end the interview when COVID hits. That's the end of the interview. Life's over. Let's pick it up when COVID ends. You touched on it a little bit at the beginning of the interview. Not for you. You've been very busy through COVID, right?
Not very busy. I'd like to have been busier doing actual gigs. The year started quite well because I'm friends with Martin Daniels, who's Paul Daniels' magician's son. And we put on a show in February. It was the Martin Daniels and Chris Cross magic show, which was nice because I didn't get to do the ones with his dad. So I put on the show with Martin Daniels at the beginning of the year. I was out doing the Dubai Mall thingy, the shopping festival. Dolphin. Yeah, I was doing that at the beginning of the year. I had a few bookings in the Canaries. What else? And then I went to Blackpool Magic Convention at the beginning of the year, which was always good as a punter. So I had a good start to the year, and I had lots of actually quite high-profile celebrity bookings in this year, which I can't go into again. I've signed non-disclosure agreements. But the COVID pandemic thing put a stop to all of the good things that I had lined up for the year. A lot of it's been postponed until next year. Some of it's been cancelled. So after buying my dream house last December, we moved in on the 17th of December, there's, I can't just rely on hopefully getting a grant from the government, or hopefully a booking coming in, or hopefully, I've got to be proactive and diversify my skills as an entertainer in order to survive and get through it without doing a job that I don't want to do. So I don't want to go and be a packer for Amazon. That's just a generic, if you are, fine. But that's the sort of one that crops up,
Well, you spent your life developing skills for doing a thing. It'd be nice for you to be able to utilize those skills, utilize all the knowledge you built up, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to put food on the table to keep my girlfriend looked after, because she's been a massive part of my positive changes. She's been
She's gone on that journey with you.
Yeah. She's met me when I was a bit rock and roll, and my mum and dad were like, bloody hell, and then it's plateaued, and I've become a nice person. I think, yeah, I'm a nice person. I looked after my grandparents until their very last breaths. So that was good. And a big part of the reason why I wasn't traveling the world and going to big festivals and things like that, so 2010 was big, 11, 12, 13 not great, 14 it picks up again, but then between 2014 in 2018, for those 4 years, I couldn't go around the world globetrotting anyway, because I was the sole carer for my grandparents. I was bathing my granddad and everything, and making all the foods and giving them a tablet. So I'm still doing my gigs at this point, just not aiming and marketing to go around the world. And when they passed away in 2018, that's when I started saying, right, Crisscross, come on, let's start getting some international bookings as a nice guy, with a new show and new image, and let's do it. And it was happening. I got some nice gigs in last year. The beginning of the year was great. Two countries under the belt in 2 months.
And then COVID hits.
Then COVID hits. It was going to be a really good year. So instead of just sitting around and getting depressed and getting poor and worrying about my bills and all that malarkey, I was proactive. I am proactive. I have days when I wake up and think, I'm just going to stay asleep. I don't want to get up and do the jobs on the list. I'm fed up today. And then I get days when I get up and I go, right, come on, what have I got to do? And get stuff done. And I've been getting some good ideas. I've bought a business.
What business did you buy? I know we talked about it a little bit earlier on in the show, but let's talk about it a little bit now. What was the business you bought?
It's called the Card Collection, set up in 1969. It's a business that sells magic tricks to magicians, and it has done at magic conventions around the country. So if there's just like juggling conventions and stuff, a magic convention is like a 2 or 3 day or even a 1 day event where there's lectures, where there's shows, where there's stalls selling stuff. This company's been a stall, a sort of a permanent fixture every year at all the magic conventions, and I bought it. So I bought the stall. I bought all the stall things.
And is that a storeroom as well, and the stock, I assume? I think we've lost Chris again. So Chris did touch on this a little bit earlier on. I saw some pictures of it. I believe he's called it the little magic rabbit shop. I think he's turning it into an online shop. So I like the industriousness of Chris, and I liked when I saw him as a young person. He was a wild child. He was crazy. He was still very successful, still working hard, still putting money aside, still, a productive person, but quite wild. And it's nice to see him now being more focused and more honed with his industriousness. It was interesting to see that during COVID, he didn't fall apart, that he did figure out ways to keep the show going and keep things working. Buy this magic shop, start working that stuff. The children's book. I love the idea of doing the kids' book. So Chris is going to come back in the line now.
Back in the room.
So yeah, you've got the magic store. Are you turning it into an online shop? Are you taking the stock that was there and then sort of digitizing it, so to speak?
Yeah, it was already a website as well. It was an online business and a stall. I've bought the name, I've bought the copyright to the exclusive tricks that it sells. I've bought all of the leftover stock. I've
Did that feel like a gamble when you were going into it?
Not for that price.
Okay.
I got it for a bargain.
Okay.
You know, the stock was worth 4 times more what I paid.
And have you got staff working with you to run orders and stuff?
No.
Okay.
I mean, COVID, isn't it? It's just a one-man band.
Is it taking a lot of your time then? Is it a 5-day-a-week job now, running the orders and keeping the? No. Yeah. Okay.
It will get busy, but I've just bought it, so I've built a new website for it. I've changed its name from the card collection, which was a big decision, to it's now called the House of the Enchanted Rabbit Magic Supplies, or Enchanted Rabbit for short. So if people say, "Oh, where did you get that change bag or that dove pan?" That's a nice one.
Why did you want to change
because
the
the
name?
card collection, it says that it just sells cards.
Okay. And you want it to be more of that stuff?
Yeah, I always want to sell cards. So I've kept the card collection name. So what I've done is I've set up a new business called the Enchanted Rabbit. That's an umbrella of 3 different sections. One of the sections is the card collection range. So the old website is diverted to that page. Another section is called the Crisscross Vintage Magic Emporium, which is all used magic, but quality, sought after, and rare pieces, not just shit that nobody wants. And the other section is Enchanted Rabbit Exclusives, which is exclusive props. For example, out of the Paul Daniels magic tricks that are reclaimed from this damp barn, I've managed to restore a lot of them. A lot of them are still sitting waiting to be restored. There's other projects when I get a minute. But some are complete and look great. I've used in theatre shows. But one of the props, it was a sealed casket escape where he escapes from a wooden box that's steel lined and all that. That was in bits. It couldn't be fixed. The mechanism was, you'd have to rebuild the trick for it to work properly. So I got plans drawn up of that trick because it's a unique method that was devised by his father and his brother specifically for him. So it's a unique method, so no one else knows in the world. So I got the plans drawn up for that, should I want to make it at a later date. Now, with the pieces of leftover wood, there wasn't much I could do apart from make a really cool coffee table or something with those, but that wouldn't bring me any money. So with the leftover wood, I got a friend of mine who's good with a lathe to make things called the Eternity Wand. And the Eternity Wand is a wooden magic wand made from the wood of the Paul Daniels prop. That's to commemorate his life and everything, and it's in a display, polycarbonate display tube. Comes with a certificate of authenticity signed by me, saying that the Eternity Wand was made from genuine Paul Daniels wood from his prop. So the exclusive range is selling things like that, stuff that you can't get anywhere else, like that Gazo download. I'm now selling exclusively the Gazo Street Stick as well. We've got some nice rosewood sticks made up with GZ on the end inscribed into them and things like that. So they're currently available on the website, which is theenchantedrabbit.co.uk or theenchantedrabbit.com. But there's only about 6 products on there at the minute, which are the exclusives that I've got on for the time being. All of the old card collection stuff needs to be added. All of the vintage magic needs to be added. And the exclusives will be added as and when they come up. But at the minute, because it's November, the end of November, it's all about the book.
Would you like to tell people where they can buy the book?
They don't want it. It's a kid's book. They don't.
A lot of people have kids. Our average viewing range is from 40 to 60.
Well, this is the Geordie Santa, and it's mainly aimed at the people in the northeast of England with kids. But it's £6.99. It's A4, it's 28 pages, full colour, beautifully illustrated. It's a bargain. Buy 10, buy 20, buy 1,000,000 for all of your friends. It's a perfect stocking filler and ideal for the Christmas Eve boxes. It's available, like I say, for £6.99 exclusively from me this year. Next year it'll be in shops. But for this year, it's exclusive to my website and you can buy it there, which is chris-cross.co.uk.
And during this entire interview, there's been a lot of sound advice. You know, I think if people sat down and wrote down why you've been successful, I think they'd do well from it in a
no
business
direct
sense.
advice, but if people want to take things away from what I've said, by all means.
So the last 10 minutes, because we've been on for an hour and 50 minutes now. So the last 10 minutes I'm going to ask a little bit of direct advice. If people are beginning, what's the things you'd tell them?
Don't stand on people's feet who are working in that area.
Is that a bit of finger pointing there?
No.
Don't stand on my fucking feet.
No.
Why'd you say that? Did you
if
say
people came and asked me for advice on how to be a magician, now I would thoroughly encourage them and I would sell them stuff. Because I've got a shop that sells magic tricks. And I would tell them that it was a marvellous idea. If someone is passionate enough and you can tell that it's what they really want to do and they really want to be a magician and they really want to, you see, I really want to be a magician. With the business aside, for getting money, I am a showman. I love doing what I do. Forget the business. I've always wanted to be a magician since I was 10.
But you said don't tread on other people's toes. I just wanted to delve into what do you mean by that more? Why is it helpful for a young person not to?
First and foremost, I want to be a magician. I want to be an entertainer. I want to be a showman. Forgetting the business. But as I said about the 2 words to show business thing, if you've got other goals in life, like to see the world and buy a house and do this and stuff that you need money for, then you need to, be a really good magician. So the last thing I want is 1,000 magicians running around in Newcastle, all saying, "Hey mate, I'll come and work in your restaurant. I'll come and work in your hotel for free. I'll just do it for tips," because I'm working there. And how do you compete with somebody who comes in offering not the same service, but to the client, another magician is offering magic tricks for free? So the less magicians, escapologists, anything. Think about when you're on the street. Okay, you share the pitch, but wouldn't it be amazing if you just walked into Covent Garden and there wasn't anybody else there just for that day and you could just bat out show after show and make a lot of money? Of course it would be.
Just for that day, but I think if I was the only street performer in existence, I'd have a pretty shit street show. I think you need those people around you to push for evolution of the art form, for you personal evolution, to get better, to improve. If there wasn't any of the street performers around, then Rob wouldn't have took you from pitch to pitch and developed the work with you. We need other people for the community to evolve and for us to live past today.
I guess now that I've got the skills and I've got the show, I'm kind of like, yeah, I want the gigs.
Yeah. Samuel Hurst says, "Yo, Matt, crisscross." Hey, Sam. So the thing you talked about with treading on people's toes is you're saying that it's only limited amount of gigs out there.
Generally don't stand on people's toes. For example, when I went out to do the bars and clubs for tips when I was a kid, coincidentally, I turned up to a bar and said I would do magic for free, and there was a magician already there working, a local magician. And afterwards, he gave me a grilling for it and said, "Mate, I'm trying to earn a living here. And I can't have you come on, that's not right." And I completely agree. But at the time, I was inexperienced. And now that I'm in his shoes, it's like, well, actually, yeah, he worked really hard to get that client. And then I'm going in and offering magic for free.
And so he was getting paid by the venue to be in there?
Yeah, and I turned up on the same night and said I would do it for free, but I didn't know he was there.
And so what's a good way of working around that? If a young person goes to a venue trying to do what you did when you were young, is there a way to tell that someone working a gig? Do you scope the place out and look for it? What's the solution for that?
Well, I don't. You can't tell if there's someone else already working there. I don't know. I think that if you like the person, if you don't like the person, fuck them. It doesn't matter. Forget about them. You know, you're the man there, and that's fine. You just, you know, say, oh yeah, well, get them for free, but you'll lose me, and I'm the best. I'm the best up here. I'm the best you can get, and you've got me now. But if you want to go with this guy, you can.
Is there any other advice you could give for younger people trying to begin as well?
Nice, if you like the guy, the guy who's turned up, he's genuinely, you know, if that happened to me, and someone turned up offering to do it for free at a gig that I was already with, then I would say, well, look, what do you? Thing is, with advice, I've been successful. There's a lot of street performers. 90% of street performers are much better than me at street performing. But I'm better at business than 90% of street performers. I think there's a lot of street performers that are good with business, but generally speaking, my skills are nowhere near as good as a lot of street performers. But they're good enough to entertain an audience, to make everyone happy, to put on a good show, and I can sell them. So if there's somebody that I like, I'll try and help them. But I've done that so many times in the past. And as an example, I was helping a magician put his act together, teaching him a few tricks, giving him advice on getting bookings and things like that. What happened? He went and started working, stealing my gigs because he was going in £200 cheaper and things like that. And so if it's some,
have you thought about maybe moving to be an agent? If you're doing that, then you might as well, if they're stealing your gigs, start organising gigs yourself. Is that a future for Chris Cross?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't rule it out. The older we get, it's a good idea to have that string to the bow. I book performers for gigs. It's not an agency, but I do book performers for gigs, for festivals and cabaret tents and comedy clubs and variety shows and such like, corporate events. So I do that, but it's I've got to concentrate on the shop first. But before I concentrate on the shop, it's the book before Christmas, and then I've got to concentrate on getting my own gigs back again, and then I might look into being an agent when I'm like 50 and can't be asked to travel around with a case anymore.
Well, you're a very busy guy, Chris. Is there anything you want to say to the people?
Busy. I'm not a busy guy. I'm busy because I choose to be, not necessarily because I have to be.
But that's what I mean. You're someone who is you make it your business to be busy. You're being productive.
Business to be busy all the time.
Yeah, you're having output, which is great. It's really good, mate. It's been a pleasure to sit chatting with you and to hear about it, to hear about your life and your ingenuity and how you've put stuff together. It's really been a joy, and it's a joy to see you now sitting in your palatial home with your gold-rimmed bloody pictures behind you. It's
hard work.
Mate.
You can be a professional performer and make a good living and realize all of your dreams. It just takes hard work, dedication, passion, and learning from your mistakes and moving on.
There you go. Any last things you want to say to everyone who's watched?
Merry Christmas, and remember they're only £6.99 from my website, chris-cross.co.uk.
Cool. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, like, share, comment.